Hi, Brooke. I just want to give you some feedback on your P-level project, and there were so many good things about. You had everything. You had all the evidence of your direct observations, which you included where you got the evidence, whether you got it from a parent, which was great that you talked to the parent, or the classroom teacher. And your observation notes, from what I understand, now I'm kind of coming in not knowing this student at all, I haven't seen her, but trying to pull what you've presented to me together to try and make sense of what you are projecting as goals and objectives. So your notes were good in that they had, what I understand, things that the child was saying, and you had a lot of examples of what the child was saying. I am unsure where sign comes in, and so I'm assuming it's oral communication. But anyway, so that was really good. And then I'm going to speak a little generally, and then I'm going to go into some detail. In terms of your P-level assessments, your observations that I saw, including observations using your checklist, matched a lot of what you were saying about P-levels. So I'm looking right here, and if this is a 3-year-old, then P-level 4 is really right. P-level 3 and 4 are really right in line with where this particular child should be. I do think that because the student had most of one, I think there was one skill that was not observed, all of 2, and much of 3, that I would give the student a 2+, because I think that in terms of what this student knows, if you think about the 5 areas, the student is good in content, the student is good in form. She was using 3 and 4 word sentences, and the student is good in reference, can refer to things, has a lot of labels for things, and can refer to people and things, and so those are 3 really strong areas. The areas which, and you picked out one of them, function was an area, using language to get things done and get needs met. The functional part, that's where a lot of the challenges were demonstrated by your observations. I also think cohesion is an area that I'd also add, so function and cohesion, and that is this child's ability to listen and link and begin those early behaviors associated with conversation. And so having a conversation or an interaction with someone, and everything you said about the child kind of reinforced that as well. So those would be 2, I would kind of focus on those 2 areas. But I thought, and I got that from your observations, so you obviously had a lot of information that was really good and helped you and I come to some decisions. Your other checklist, it just really demonstrated that he had a lot of those early communication skills. There were some that were not, were in the lower level, but for the most part he was demonstrating those in those 4 categories. The upper level skills are the ones that you're shooting for, and I thought that you had observed a lot of those. You align nicely with the Common Core because there were some very simple things in the Common Core about requests, participating. Those are all good verbs that really kind of refer to communication skills. So now I'm looking at your P-level checklist, and I see he's 3 years old. She is 3 years old in Head Start. The one thing that I would like for you to define is meltdown. You know, meltdown is sort of a colloquial term that we use for, I know what a meltdown looks like, but for this child, what does it look like and what's the function of a quote-unquote meltdown? And so it's helpful to really define what it is, what it looks like, what prompts it. And so instead of using a term like that, really kind of thinking about helping us be able to see what it looks like would be helpful. She is a bright little boy. Oh, SH is a bright little boy, so it's a little boy. Has excellent language skills, and that really came through with the content and the form and the reference, I thought. And able to communicate basic needs and wants. And so what I just kind of pictured this little guy just not making outward expressive connections and interactions in his communication. And so that came through your assessment as well. You had good examples, good contexts. Seems like a lot of his language or his strictures are around I something. I make this. I do this. I have this. And the fact that he imitates is good, because that's going to be your sort of benchmark or your kind of starting off point for beginning to build interactive communication. And so you chose 2 function P-level areas, 2 of the areas under the P-levels, and I probably would have done 1 function and 1 cohesion, because both of these are really kind of nice functional. Making requests, that's your first area, and that makes perfect sense. He's not expressing, connecting with someone and making requests for, it doesn't, you focus on his needs, like eating and going to the bathroom and those kinds of things. But even for objects and to do things, it seems like making requests is kind of that big area. And then the other thing in the second one, you talk about this idea of making choices. Making choices is a step in the direction for making requests, kind of open-ended requests. And so using making choices, which is good, to help you get to making requests is actually a good pathway. You're linking with asks for help when needed. Doesn't do that. Doesn't participate in multi-turn exchanges with adults or children. And so those are really good starting off points. And so you identified and kind of connected the function. But I think that function one really is, one of the things I'm going to suggest is that you simplify, because you have a lot of information here, and this is kind of how it goes. You've got a lot and it's big, and then you got to get it down to something you can really work with. And so what I pulled out was this idea of making choices and making requests, certainly being important. And then this other thing that you brought up, I think, with your, when you were looking at the skills, this idea of interactive play, or having joint attention on something, whether it's an object, through play, a book, it could be a lot of things, but having joint attention on something and beginning to have a conversation on that being the focus of the topic, and being able to have an exchange, whether it's connected or not, is the next step. But just being able to talk about and go back and forth with someone, that might be the beginning of this child's conversation. And so then you go into goals, and I think that you're aiming in the right direction, but I think again it's too much and too complicated and really hard to monitor. One of the things that I'll encourage you to do is to think about those really important big skills that you can work directly on and reinforce and see a difference. If you can do that, the other skills kind of come along. And so, and that generally is the way it happens. You don't have to teach each specific thing. Otherwise, you'd be like going nuts. But you do talk about in this first goal, communicating, being able to communicate in this particular classroom environment and meet the expectations for communication. And that's actually, I'm kind of moving into this next module where it's, there are expectations in this K-3 classroom that students do certain kinds of, be able to engage in certain kinds of communication. What are those expectations? And so this general goal will increase knowledge and communication skills in order to function appropriately. Meet expectations is really what you want him to do. The expectations that of a 3-year-old in a 3-year-old kindergarten classroom with 65% accuracy. I haven't a clue how you're going to measure that, but anyway, you have a lot of things here that might define that, and I think I would, again, I'm going to try and encourage you to simplify that. And then the second one, which I think is this, is actually quite a good idea in terms of trying to get, again, joint attention and talk about a topic with another adult or another peer. Participate in all activities with 80%. And again, I don't know how you're going to measure that. But this one that struck me was SH will participate in the classroom and or fine motor activities. Well, let's be specific. A joint activity that's, part of the classroom routine that is adult directed for at least 10 minutes, 4 to 5 opportunities. But the language part of that is that he comment. One of the things this child does is he narrates. He appears to narrate. So he talks and he narrates as he kind of goes through, but it has nothing to do with somebody else, with interacting with somebody else. So anyway, okay, so let me kind of going from there. These are just some of my comments. I think out of the 5 big categories, your P-level assessment reflects areas that are concerns. Again, function and cohesion. Those are the 2 areas I would focus on. And you got one of them for sure. The others appear to be really developing, but again, outside of this ability to have a social, interactive communication. And he is 3, so you have to think about what does that look like. So it does seem like using language in ways that are typical for a 3-year-old function, and requests are really big for 3-year-olds. So that, and it is one of those things in the P levels that kind of comes out as a priority area. So let me try and suggest, again to simplify, that in terms of function, you identify making requests and making choices. Both are good targets. I also, I'm going to, although I might put this under cohesion, talk about questions. But, and then under cohesion, he imitates, that's good, but he doesn't link with others on a topic. He's having his own conversation. He's not having it with somebody else. This implies joint attention to objects and events, linking with the topic by using similar language, a response to a question, for example, or again, repeating. I think you have some good ideas. So let me suggest that the first goal might be increase the use of functional communication skills, or those skills that are expected as part of the classroom routine, social and academic activity that support learning and support interaction in a preschool classroom. And the two skills that I think make perfect sense are to initiate and make requests. And I'll bet in that classroom you can watch and you will see there are about 10, I don't know how many, but take inventory of what are the kinds of requests that are part of that classroom activity. What are the expectations? And then, and this idea of making choices. Is it this or is it this? Is it this or is it this? That's actually a precursor to initiate activity. So you could start with choices and then move to then modeling and encouraging the student to initiate requests. And it doesn't just have to be for needs. I mean, it can be this book or that book, this game or that game, this chair or that chair. There are just lots of ways you can help the child engage and make that kind of decision. So that's sort of what I would focus on for the functional communication. And then increase language associated with interactions with adults and peers, such as through asking and answering questions. And maybe you start with answering questions because that's easier. There is at P level 4, I believe, there is, does the child use language to establish and identify things and people? Who and what questions? And so start with responding to who and what questions, and then help him begin to ask who and what questions. Again, you're moving developmentally. And then this idea of commenting on topic and consistently through a joint activity, like sitting down and reading a book and having turn-taking, beginning to encourage turn-taking. Now, I understand that it's hard to get to these. You like set the path, and you were kind of going in the same direction, but I think it got very complicated because there's so many things that you want to work on with this student. The other thing is, I think there's a little bit of behavior. That's the thing that's hard to separate, right? There's some behavior, so there's some compliance issues, but language is related to that. But that means that you may also need a behavior management system associated with some of these, so a behavior management system and some system of rewards when you see this particular child engage in activities. So this leads to this next, what you did here leads to the next module, because you begin to think about what the standards are asking, what are the expectations, and you're also, and you're looking at it through the Common Core. You're also looking at it for ESL bilingual, although this student isn't bilingual. But the WEMLs, actually this is a 3-year-old, so WEMLs will be the better standards for you to use, to become familiar with those and to begin to think about how and where you will teach and support and expect this particular behavior to happen. And so you look at a framework that talks about your approach. Is it explicit and direct, or is it embedded in some other activities? And with whom? Is it by you and the child, one-on-one? Is it you and the child in a small group? And then is it in the regular classroom? How you begin to build out for these particular activities. And again, making it very simple by focusing on increasing functional communication through making choices and initiating requests. And then you have a checklist that says there are all the ways that the student can use requests or make choices in the classroom. You can monitor that. Increasing language associated or used within interactions where there is joint focus. And so questions, answering questions, and making comments that are on topic. And encouraging more turns this way. You can measure that, and you can find very specific contexts in which you can teach that. So that's what you need. Take this, because you've got a lot of really good information on this particular student, and use it in Module 4 to begin to really frame out how you're going to start thinking about supporting and instructing this student. So you did a nice job. I hope I have a good picture of this student. You will let me know if I don't. But this is sort of what I saw in your assessment and the kind of feedback I wanted to give you. Okay. You will get back to me if there are any questions. Thanks, Brooke.